Welcome to the Backyard Machine Shop. My name is Mike. And today, guys, we're going to be putting back together the Emmert 10A Machinist Vise. Now, this was the work that I really enjoyed it. You know how bad this vise was when I first got it. It had been sitting outside for years and years. Every part was stuck. Every steel part was broken and froze up. It took me forever to get the vise apart, and then we had to basically remake every single piece on the vise. Now, the vise itself is the casting. I don't know if it's just the casting or if the casting started pitting or what, but the casting was not in the best of shape. So as I was rebuilding this vise, I was thinking about it. I didn't want to go to I didn't want to go to that point of filling all the pits and things. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted to show this vise, and I wanted it to look like it had been sitting in a shop for the past 75, 80 years and been taken care of somewhat, normal wear. So I set out, and that was my theme behind this restoration. Now, every part on it has been remade, but every part on it also I went to an extra step to make it look like it was 70 or 80 years old. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move the camera over here near where I'm at, and we're going to start putting the vise together. So just bear with me. I'll be right back. Here we have the base. Now, this base, as you can see, this is the normal wear side of this base, and it's worn pretty much slap out over here. I thought about rotating the whole base around and using this side, but I really didn't like the way I would have had to be so far away from the edge of the table that I don't think I would have liked it. So we're gonna start out with it like this. We may have to spin it around and do something different. But what this does is there's a clamp, and that clamp presses down, and it locks into these little grooves casted into this base. So the first thing we're gonna do is put together this whole assembly here. I'm making a little shim. And here's the block that presses onto. I didn't take this apart. I should have taken this out. All right, we're gonna leave it right in there. All right, so we got a little block here that drops into this slot here, and that's what actually locks a swivel around. So we're going to take and press that on. All right, guys, so here's probably the only two plate pieces other than the block that went in there that I didn't have to remake. So this is a 1-inch nut, a bolt. Now it's chowdered up a little bit. I've taken and blasted it and kind of squared and got all the little dings off of it. Sandblasted the washer. So need to go find a suitable wrench. Now, I haven't put this thing together since I took it apart. I thought about remaking this, but I was like, you know, we need to leave something as much of the original as we can. All right, sure. The base is still swivel. I don't want it too tight. There we go. Let's bite down on it just a little bit more. All right. All right, guys, so we've got this together, and what I've done is I come in here and I've drilled and tapped 3 locations here for the base. And I originally wanted to mount this at the other end of the table with the reed vise, but both of them are just so big, they take up pretty much all the space around them. So we're gonna mount this down here. Now I've got my surface plate right here. We may end up having to move our surface plate at some point, but there's really no other good place to put the vise. So I've already drilled and tapped it. Let's see. Let's get the bolts. Now, this bolt's a shorty because there's gussets and reinforcement under this table that run all over the place, and I just happened to hit one right here, so I could only go down about as deep as the yeah, we may have to go get a thinner washer. Tell you what, let's go see if I can find a thinner washer. We'll go ahead and put these 2 in. Got us a wrench. One of the things we had to make was this screw. This is a 3/4 4 TPI square thread bolt to hold down this thing from rotating. Now, I made a Tommy bar for it, and it took about 3 tries because this is not exactly 750. It's got like one thread in here for this thing to run on, and the diameter wasn't perfect. I think this thing had been beaten up. I went in there and relieved some of the thread, a couple other things, and finally got it to work. But I ended up making like 3 of these, slightly smaller each time until I got one to fit. Now I have some video of making this, and I'll show it right now. What I have you over here at the Monarch, and what we're doing here is we're making this part right here, this screw, square thread, it's 1 3/4 long, and basically it's the hold down for the swivel on the vise. So we're going to start down. We're going to turn down the rod down to 3/4 from 1 1/8, I think, and we're going to go ahead and just do the whole screw out here, and then we'll part it off or cut it off. So our first step is to reduce this diameter down to 3/4 of an inch. Let's make sure we're in the right gear. So we're running about 700 RPM. So we're just going to touch off here instead of 0. So we're going to go down to 1 inch and 3/4. That's the total length of our part. We're going to go a little further. Let's give it an extra 100 thousandths. Let's go to 1 inch 850. Alright. So let's feed it in about 30 thousandths here. I still had it in thread. There we go. All right, so we're just turning this down to 3/4. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come off the front of this thing. Set a 0. We're going to go 1 inch. Then we're going to go 1 inch 250. And we're going to go 2 inches. Here is we have a threading tool that I ground up. It's 125 thousandths across. It's square. It's all we need to make that square groove. Okay, so what we're going to come in and do now, our print has a radius here of a 130 thousandths radius or an 1/8 inch radius. In here, we're going to just cut that square And then that's going to be our relief for the tool to go into at the end of the thread. So I'm going to do that now. We need to go in about 100 thousandths. Okay, now we're going to set our machine up to thread 4 threads per inch. So we need to go A, C, gear thread, and we're going to go in back gear. Okay, so all we're going to do with just a square thread, since we're going to go straight in, is we're going to just come in and touch off, and we're going to use our compound, not our compound, but our cross feed to feed in. And touch right there, set 0, back off, come back to about 4 thousandths. All right, this is going to be fast. Probably don't need this right now, but we're going to run it. So what we're going to use for our thread gauge is we're going to use the old damaged thread, and that looks like it's it right there. All right, so let's start this baby going. All right, so we're running about 150 RPMs. right, so we're getting close to being there. We need to be 73 thousandths depth of cut. We should be at about 70 right now. We're at 66 and a half. So let's make some light passes. All right, let's see where we at. 76 thousandths. So I'm gonna take it right from right there and call that finished. Hopefully it'll fit into the part. So guys, so we're gonna put this in, and basically this pushes down on that wedge, which grabs a hold of those teeth that are in the base. And all right, so we don't want it to lock it down, because I need to turn it around and do some other stuff. All right, so the next thing we have, okay, so if you remember, we made this in one of the other videos. This is the latching mechanism, or the indexing mechanism for the tilt, and it's just a simple turning. It fits in. Let's rotate this around. So it fits in with the spring. Whoop, gotta put the spring on. And we had to turn this little handle. Again, these are all new parts. And the process I use to age them is basically I sandblasted them and then treated them with a little bit of boiled linseed oil with a little tint to it, and just wiped it right back off. And I hope it turns out like I want it to. I think it turned out real well. So the indexer's in there. The finish on the base, on the vise itself is the same thing. It's a flat black paint mixed with linseed oil and water, and thinned down a good bit with mineral spirits, and just rubbed it on, let it sit for a while, and rubbed it back off. This is exactly what I was looking for. You know, you always, when you're doing stuff like this, normally we take and paint the thing, make it look new, but I wanted to make it look like it had been being used for a while. So next thing we're going to do, let's let the compressor do its thing. All right, so next thing we're going to put in the actual body, and goes in just like that. And we have, all right, so we have an axle shaft here. Now I made this in a previous video, and you can go back and watch how it was made. Very simple. Have put a key in it, and it basically just slides in like that. Okay, so let's rotate around. You can see this. Now, All right, so the next thing we made is we had to make this. Now this was a casting on the original, and I thought about making a pattern and sending it to Windy Hill and get it casted, but I tried my hand at turning and seeing what I can do with it, and I got pretty close. I'm not exactly right where it should have been, but what I've done was I ground two tools. I grounded, these are threading dies for a rigid threader, and they're dull on the threads, and so I just use them for high-speed steel, and I've had them for years, and I've never found a use for them, so finally had a project. So what I done was I ground this radius. It's a 1.2 inch radius, 1 inch 200 radius. And I basically, and I've got video of this and I'll show some video. I just come in and started working this radius around, all the way around until I got this. And then I turned it upside down and came back here and worked this radius. So, and run the lathe backwards and cut that. So, and then I took this. Here is the same thing. It's a rigid die, and I ground a radius, a 4 inch radius, or sorry, a 2 inch radius on this one. And I come in here and I just basically started working this and worked it in and kind of blended the lines in, and until I got what I wanted. And then, you know, we worked on it with some files and some grinding discs and a couple other things. But I've got video. And it wasn't pretty. It cut great. The shape come out great, but the chatter was excessive. Anyway, we ended up having it made, and we got it in the end. And so this basically just screws on here. And this helps lock this in its position. We're going to turn this around this way, because our next thing is we have a Tommy bar here. And the way I made these Tommy bars, and I don't have video of this, but I do have, the way I made these Tommy bars is I just bought some ball stock. And this is, it looks like it's hot rolled or something. It's pretty nasty to work with, but it's not like a ball bearing where it's been hardened, you know, and you can't hardly work with it. At first I thought about using ball bearings, and I've used ball bearings in the past, and they're really, really tough to work with. But all I did was I took some drill rod and just threaded both ends. And then when we get through here, I'm gonna take and put some retaining compound on these where they'll stay. And again, we aged them. I say aged them. I didn't want them to shine. So I just took and blasted them, and then took and rubbed them down with linseed oil and that stain. So we got it made. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is put in the main body. So, yeah, so here's the main body of the vise. You got 3 sets of jaws here. This is a soft jaw of some type. Either it's a poured Babbitt or something of that nature. You can look in the back, and you can't really see it now that I've got that little bit of stain on it. But whatever it looks like it was poured through, and at some point. So I didn't mess with trying to change these out. They're actually in fairly good condition. This one's got a little bit of pitting in it, but really and truly it wasn't worth the effort of changing it out. Now this is your standard jaw, which was a hard jaw, and then you have this jaw here, which I don't have any, but I need to get some made. They had a pivoting a pivoting jaw on those, and I think you can get pipe jaws to go on them and other things like that. So that was the idea behind this vise. I understand why they probably were never a big hit, but it's kind of unique. So, well, I'm gonna take and all right, so I'm gonna take and put a little grease on this joint here and kind of just work it around, give it some lube, and do the same thing back here. I might need to go through just a little bit of do you. This is where the thing's going to be nasty, putting it together. All right. So it slides in. And pivots down there nicely. All right, so the next thing that goes in, we're going to turn you back around in this direction. So this is your nut. Now it's seen its days. It looks like it, you know, factory. It was drilled kind of close to the edge, and that's the way it fits. It's rusted up pretty good. It's got some pitting in it, and the way we want to put this in is we want to align the bolts. First of all, you got a key that has to go into that piece to keep it all aligned, and then you want to align your bolts so you can get to them. Now, this also doesn't get tightened up. It stays slightly loose, and this is your lock for your rotation. When you clamp down on something, this actually pulls into the back of the casting. It locks the rotation of this vise. So this is kind of tricky getting it in here. Now you got to find your key. So your longer screws go in up here. We're not in our key. The key is not there. All right, so the key goes up. There we go. All right, so your shorter screw goes in down here. And I'm just going to hand tighten them. So, tightening them up, but when I'm being tightened, can't rotate. So, just want to back off of them a couple of turns. There we go. All right, so I want to put some grease on the nut. All right, so the next part is the tricky part. All right, so the next thing to go in is the movable jaw. Now this one, the soft jaw, is a little rough for shaping, and I'll probably end up making some covers to go on these. You got the hard jaw, soft jaw, and then the floatable jaw. Now this is a tricky part to go together. We've got a collar, and I'm going to try to do this without having to put the screw in and until after I get this in, because it's just so heavy. Now this key has to line up with the key that's in there, which will line your jaws up in the proper orientation. So when we look at it, we have the floating jaw portion to the side. All right, now I'm gonna lube this, but not with grease. Got some WD-40 dry lube here. We're just gonna spray this. Okay, now hopefully this will slide right in. There we go. Okay. All right, so now the tricky part. Back this out. All right, so here's our screw, and we're going to take some of this grease and kind of paint these threads just a tad bit. Don't want a whole lot, don't want a mess, just enough to give it some lube. And this is I believe it's synthetic grease. I've had it for years. All right, that should do it. Rotate you around a little bit. So we're sliding the screw in, and the trick is there's a set screw in that collar, and that's another piece I didn't have to make. I just had to retap it and put in the set screw. And then there's an indentation here, a locking point in the screw. So we're going to slide through, hopefully slide right through that. Then we're going to thread the nut. All right, I need to find where that. Need a little bit of light. All right, that's it right about there. All right, guys, so I don't know how much got recorded, but we've got 7.5 inches here. We probably could get 8 inches. Now, one of the cool things about this vise now, one, it rotates to whichever jaw you want. And like I said, when you clamp this down, well, you got to clamp something in it. Anyways, it rotates and lock it down, and it won't move. Okay, so it also, and I don't know if I can do this or not, if I'm man enough to do this. It also will, I'm going to use that bar for leverage. It will also rotate into several indexing positions, which honestly I don't know what I'll ever use that for. Let's get a good view of that where we can see it in all its glory. Now, this thing stands 36 inches from the table to the top of the finial here. So it works in all the positions. I've got to set some. It's a lot easier in this position. It's a fact. Okay, we got a piece of tool steel here. Let's clamp that in place. I'll tell you what, let's do it. Lay it flat. Like I said, once you clamp it down, it shouldn't rotate. In here, it's going to rotate down here because I don't have it locked good. But anyways, it's got a good grip on everything. And I think we can lock this thing in a between position. Okay. What are we catching on? There we go. Next one. Again, this thing is so heavy. Into the last one. All right, guys, there you have it. A few things to tell about the Vise. One is, let me know how you like this finish on it. It's growing on me. Again, I did not want to go in here and paint it, make it look new with all these gouges and scratches. I didn't want to fill these gouges and scratches. I wanted this to look like it's been in someone's shop for years, or been in my shop for years. How about that? And so this is the finish I come up with. I've never used a bull linseed oil before with paint thinners. I read about it and said, well, let's try it. If nothing else, I can always clean it off. All the machine parts. After I got this finish on it, I started looking at these parts, and eventually they're going patina. So I was trying to figure out how to patina these parts from the get-go. So what I did was, again, I just took and sandblasted all the parts. These were all drill rods, and you know how shiny drill rod comes in. I've sandblasted them. I think this might have been some 41 40 or either a 4L 40 or whatever that stress-proof 4140 is. I think I had to stick it out around here, and that's what I used. All this was pretty much made out of the same material. The bolt here, you know, everything. I'm glad I didn't have to make anything like that nut. That nut would have it would have scrapped the whole vise. So, anyways, I hope you guys like the finish on it. I love it. I need to send some pictures to Miss Lisa. I don't know if you heard the story in the first video I did, that this vise belonged to a friend of mine, a co-worker back a couple years ago. He passed away, and he had this vise for years, just sitting on a table outside. and it was, I don't know if you remember, it was full of ants and just all kinds of stuff. And I had to take and basically cut every part. Here's the shaft that went back here. I had to cut it apart. Here's the shaft that was the indexer. Everything had to be basically milled out and pressed out. I mean, pressed to 15 tons of pressure, probably pressing some of the stuff out. Some things were missing. They had a pipe, piece of half-inch water pipe for a handle. All this was missing. Had to remake all that. So I think it turned out good. I guess that's going to be a wrap. It's a massive vise. It's heavy, cumbersome, but I'm starting to love it. I got it mounted here on the table. Got the reed 206 on the other side. Wait for the table to kind of fall over. You know, it's amazing how heavy this thing is. I'm guessing at least 200 pounds. So guys, again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Please leave a comment. Please hit the like button. From the Backyard Machine Shop. So long.